Hi, and welcome back to Beyond the Boardroom podcast from Matthew Douglas. I'm joined today by Andrew De Groot, who is an action coach. I don't know if you've come across that before. He is the managing director of ActionCoach Exeter, and he's been working with us for some time. So I thought it would be an interesting discussion to actually have a chat with Andrew and introduce you and get an understanding of how he can help us and what his organisation does for small businesses across the country. Andrew, welcome.
Hey, thank you, Matthew. Great to see you.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Thank you so much for coming up to see us. I know we often speak on remotely, so it's a real pleasure to have you actually with
in
us
person. Yeah, not on Zoom. Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. So I think a good place to start. It'd be nice to know. Just give us a little bit of an idea of what ActionCoach does.
Oh, yeah, sure. ActionCoach invented business coaching. Brad Sugars did that about 32 years ago. So it's sort of, pretty much any other coaching system is taken from an action coach perspective. They've just generated huge amounts of intellectual property. They have action coaches in over 70 countries in the world. There's over 1,000 coaches, all helping businesses, small, medium-sized enterprises, day in, day out, achieve their growth and ambitions.
That's fantastic. And what sort of attracted you to this in the first place?
Oh, that's really interesting. For me, the great thing about it is that when you set your own business up, it's difficult. But if you think about it, small businesses, when they set themselves up, 80% of them fail in the first year. Yep. But if you join a franchise, which ActionCoach is, then in the first year, 75% succeed. So I wanted really to work with a company that had a fantastic operating model, something that was proven success, and it attracted me because I love business. And it combines my business experience with its intellectual property, and together I think that's going to be a great force for good in businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I always think this is quite an interesting thing, that so many people who start a business, they start a business in an area that they know, which is always a good place to start. But just because you're doing that doesn't mean you've ever had an experience of actually how to run a business.
That's right. So, I mean, if you think about it, the very first, when the business owner at the beginning is first of all the creator. They've come up with a great idea. They then become the operator of the business, and they're not operating the business. Yeah. But actually, they've got to become a business owner at some point. And that's a big transition. That's a third hat to wear, and often one that's massively overlooked.
Well, I suppose the issue is it's such a sort of diverse group of sort of skill sets that you have to actually run a business in the first place.
Yeah.
Obviously you've got to have the ideas, you've got to have the compulsion to want to take the risk and believe in what you're doing, but it doesn't always make you a great manager.
That's right. Well, I mean, you say manager, but I think you're right on there, Matthew. If you think about it, you've got sales, you've got marketing, you've got HR, you've got technology, you've got the actual operation of the business itself, you've got to understand financials. Yeah, there's a really wide breadth of skills, and most of those things aren't taught in schools.
Yeah, very good point. So that being the case, I mean, why would somebody use an action coach, would you say?
I think business itself is quite lonely at the top. When you're running it, you're there by yourself. You've actually got really very little accountability. Did I do a good job today? Oh, I think I did. Did I not do that? Well, I don't have to tell anyone that at all. Business itself is lonely when you're running it, because who do you actually tell your deepest issues to? You can't tell that to the team, the staff. And also at the same time, if you want to work with a coach, then that person's going to encourage you and hold you accountable to your plans and your growth. Otherwise, you don't have it. In a big company, large companies, they've got boards. You're accountable to a board. You don't have that in a small business.
Yeah, I must admit, speaking from my own experience, you always have to kind of retain your humility.
Yes.
When you're running a business, and I think I've spoken to so many other business owners, and the one thing they all have in common is once you actually get to know them, you realise that they massively suffer from imposter syndrome. So it's a scary prospect, and I mean obviously we've worked with you for what 3.5 years.
That's right. Yeah, 3 years.
Like yeah. I mean, I know for us the difference that it's made, simply for all the reasons that you've said, it just creates a level of accountability that perhaps we wouldn't have had before. And I think sometimes it's actually quite helpful to have a third party looking, getting a sort of helicopter's eye view of what you're doing, because you're just so
in the detail.
You're so in the detail. You're so wrapped up in the day-to-day, just existing and getting things done, and you're constantly having, you've got your important pile and must be done today pile, and it's very hard to make sense of those things. So the thing that's been huge for us is that accountability, and actually, you identify projects that are short term, long term, the things that need to get done, and actually using the people around you who are usually very willing to help, and actually getting the best out of them.
Yeah, yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think of all the different things that you would bring to a business like ours, and obviously we're just one business. I mean,
Yes.
there's so many different types of business. What other sort of businesses do you work with?
The full spectrum businesses. I think the key thing I want to work with is businesses that want to grow, that have the ability to be coachable. One of the great things about you, Matthew, and the firm is that you want to grow and you've got a culture of learning. And you really do identify with the fact that you recognise that sort of the day-to-day operational issues, but you know when you spend time with myself, you're working on the business. It's about growing it strategically. And that finding that space to do that is difficult. And in fact, you because we have the time in the diary to do it, you turn up to it and you're working more on the business then than any other time.
I remember you saying that to me very early on, in the sense that you must work on the business, or the business, not in the business, because you realise that actually 90% of your day to day is literally client facing, dealing with all the stuff that really you shouldn't be doing, because you're the guy who's supposed to be the decision maker. And if you're doing that, you're not making decisions for the long term.
Yeah. I mean, it's always good to keep an operational handle on things. Make sure you're in your game, and of course you still do. You still have clients, but you've got less clients now, and you're spending more time on building the rest of the team, building the culture, and you've made huge differences in that.
Yeah, I think it's easy to obsess on this idea that you must lead by example and be shown that you can do it well.
That's right.
So everybody else in the business can follow your lead. But I think that's kind of losing sight of what it's all about. So what was your background? How did you find yourself here?
Well, I've had a really lucky background. I've been training really and learning about business coaching pretty much most of my life. If you take the learning aspect, then I'm lucky enough to become a chartered accountant. Well, I think it's lucky. Then not everyone does, but I do. Then some of that I've had with the corporations I've worked with. I've been lucky enough to go through Harvard Business School training, London Business School training. I've even done a week at Santos Business Academy. So yeah, I've had some really great training. And then in terms of experience, I've been lucky enough to have experience across from small businesses when I first started learning chartered accountancy, then to large corporations, and work across all these great disciplines. So I've been finance transformation, I've been a chief operating officer, I've been a head of operations for large teams.
Yeah, I think that's really funny, because speaking as a small business owner, I can honestly say I've had none of those things. But what's great about that is it's like anything that you do in business, you have to leverage the knowledge around you, and you do it with the members of your team that you work with. But actually, dealing with outside consultants like Andrew actually is so helpful, because they can actually get a complete picture on what you're actually doing.
The key thing really has been for me, my career, is to turn that corporate knowledge into something that works for small businesses and pivot that. And that's been one of my greatest joys, actually, in making that work, transforming that knowledge with the ActionCoach system into something that helps small businesses.
Yeah, I remember one of the very first things you ever said to me when we first started. You turned around and you said, "Right, show me your org chart." And I remember thinking, I have no idea what you're talking about. And that was a massive first step, to actually understand and write down what you do in your business, and then break it down and say, actually, should I be doing those tasks? Are there other people in the organisation who can also do those tasks? We're not a huge organisation. We're 18, 19 people. So when you start from a position of one person, you obviously do, as the sort of MD, you do everything. But as you grow, there's so many businesses, and I know this in financial services, there's so many businesses that basically stall when they get to a certain size, because the principal of the business just cannot let go. They want to be at every step, at every stage of the business. They want to have all the relationships, because I don't know if it's a lack of trust or just because they've never been shown another way.
I think on the whole, what I see a lot is a lot of perfectionism. People want the business to work well, and they know the best person to do it is themselves. And so, we often talk about in ActionCoach that if you are a perfectionist, and this, for all the guys out there, takes about if someone else in your company can do the job at least as 70% as well as you can, let it go. Simple as that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I do recognise that. I mean, it's good to be a perfectionist, but I think I know it's a classic sort of cliche to say it, but you never want to be. You never want the perfect to be the enemy of the good.
No. I mean, think about it. Like, if you think about that, the role at the top, what is it really? I mean, your number one role as a business owner is to train everyone around you and set good training platforms. If you train people, what do you get? You get people who are empowered. If you get empowered people, you get people who will perform for you. You get high performance. That's what you want, high performing teams.
And what do you think is the single biggest factor that actually creates that?
High performing teams?
Yeah.
Culture. It has to be. And culture, you get what you tolerate. So many business owners want to be nice to people. You know, it's not about sort of days off and pizza days and things like that. You have to get a really good culture in the team of performance.
Yeah.
But where's performance come from? It comes from great communication. It comes from having great clarity on what your KPIs, your scorecards are. These are things that are important to do, and a regular habits. Habits are such an important thing. Good disciplines.
Well, I know one of the issues that you and I have not always seen completely eye to eye on, and I kind of understand it, and I know that in my heart of hearts you're probably right, and that's what we talk about. You know, when you run a small business, you're with a small group of people who you get to know very, very well. You know
everything about
them. You know their families. You know everything about them, and it's very, very easy to kind of let things drift, and you tolerate things because you just think, I haven't got the bandwidth for this.
Yeah.
I can't deal with it. So it's very easy not to deal with stuff. I know obviously you work for HSBC, you've worked for a much larger organisation, so perhaps maybe it's your accountancy training.
Yeah.
You're much better at being objective.
Mm.
So,
but I think people want clarity. And remember, when you set an organisation up and it starts with a few number of people, yes, you do end up accommodating them potentially. But if you've got to think of that bigger picture, if you were twice the size of an organisation, would you want to accommodate that? 3 times, would you want to do that? Otherwise, if you don't do that, then people don't like being unfair. They like clarity. They want to know where they're going. They want to know their rules. And I think the hardest thing is when you're a small business, everyone needs to do everything, right? Everyone has to do every job. But as you get bigger, then jobs become clearer, and you want to give that clarity for people. People would, I'm a very optimistic person. I genuinely believe that people want to come to work to do a good job.
yeah.
What is a good job? And if they're not told what a good job is, then they can't really celebrate the success of it. They can't celebrate the progression.
Yeah, I must admit, one thing I have noticed is when you do tolerate, maybe behaviour that you think is not compatible with your organisation, and you call it out, and you feel really awkward doing it, you suddenly realise that the people around you they just heave a big sigh of relief.
That's right. It's not about the individual; it's about the team.
Yeah, yeah. No, I have kind of learned that over the years.
You've done well, yeah.
But so, what do you think are the biggest challenges that small businesses are facing over the next couple of years?
I don't think that the challenges of business have really changed that much. They're always the same thing. A lot of people will talk about the wider picture, the economy, the market, etc. But fundamentally, a good business just has to have a good business model. And some business models are just really difficult. If you're a person working in trades, for instance, once you've done the job, you've got to go and find another job, and then you've got to find another job. And if you can have trades that have repeat business, fantastic news. Customers come back to you on a frequent basis. But there's lots of business models out there where they don't have that. You don't have repeat business models. So I think, first of all, finding a good business model. Can you get subscription income? Can you get repeat revenue? These are important things to try and get in that. So good business model. The next thing is that within any market, you need to be able to be top of your hill, right? You need to be number one person there. So be the best in what you're good at in your area, and you will succeed if the business model is a good one.
Yeah.
You can talk about everything else and it all crashing around you, but if you've got a product that people want or a service people want, then people will always want it in that market. You just have to be the best in that market and focus on that.
Well, I must admit, speaking as a financial advisor, I see this with our clients. You see different people in the same industry doing what looks like a very similar role, and yet one person's incredibly successful and one person is completely the opposite.
Yeah.
And I think it comes back to the word you mentioned earlier, culture.
Yes.
I think if you get that right, everything else spins from that.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, there are plenty of organisations out there. In fact, I don't think I've been in an organisation so far where people aren't smart, as in they understand their industry, they know what they're talking about, they know their trade. Everyone's smart, but the question is, are they organisationally healthy?
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing. In fact, if you think about it as a manager, it's easy to call out somebody who hasn't made targets, but it's not easy to call them out if they haven't made their culture, if they're not living their values.
Yeah.
And that's the brave pill for most people.
So you've got to lay that out pretty clearly.
Really clearly. And I think you want to live it. And you have to have that authenticity to live it yourself. You know, the tougher part as you get bigger in an organisation is you suddenly realise, and you mentioned imposter syndrome earlier, but people are, you cast a long shadow. The bigger the organisation you get, your shadow goes out. So if you're not living it yourselves, you're giving permission for everyone else to do that as well.
I think at this point I need to make an apology because I did park on the drive this morning and we're supposed to leave that space for a client. So I apologise. I apologise to all my staff and I apologise to everybody out there. I'm sorry.
You did give me a lift, I suppose, and I'm a client, but hey, maybe not.
Yeah, fair enough. I've got some questions I should ask you.
Go for it.
Which we talked about. What's one thing you wished that you'd learned at school?
I think more entrepreneurship. I mean, schools are designed for people to become employees.
Yeah.
And I think it's the greatest failing of schools. So if you think, what would I want in entrepreneurship, there's things like the Young Entrepreneurs Scheme and things like that. But I really mean deeply, like marketing and sales, right? Yeah. No one gets taught that. And yet the fundamentals of every business succeed. Marketing, sales, and finance. Those are the two major skills you need. Yeah. They're not taught. And I think schools should pivot more into entrepreneurship and not into employship.
Well, I suppose the thing with schools is that they are very much geared towards academic achievement.
Absolutely.
So
lawyers, accountants, doctors, teaching, any of the professional educations, that's what they're pivoted towards.
Yeah. So if you're top of your class, you tick, you've done it.
Absolutely.
So, but unfortunately,
life's not like that.
Schools usually end at 18, so you've got to then work your way through for the rest of your life. And if you're not top of the class, clearly, it's not all over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, totally true.
Okay, that's interesting. One other question: what's your biggest financial concern right now?
Oh, it's the country, actually. It's not about me personally, it's about the country. I look at France with a debt in that GDP of 116%, and France, I don't think can recover from that. I don't believe it can recover. It's on the downhill trajectory. The UK is sitting at 100% debt ratio. We're on a tipping point, and can we make it back? So my biggest concern is, can this country manage to create more entrepreneurs, more growth, to actually improve, so basically start paying off the debt of the country. And I believe that requires strong businesses with strong coaching. Yeah,
I totally understand what you say. If I do feel when you look at governments, just generally, they don't run it like a business. They really don't. Yeah. I'm not saying they should. Sometimes there are disciplines that you need to follow.
There was a politician recently, I must admit, I can't remember who it was, but they said something along the lines of, at the moment in the UK, it feels like we have a state system with private enterprise on the side. And it's really meant to be a private enterprise booming to allow a fantastic state system. And that's the sort of, that's my main worry.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. I guess we just have to focus on what we can control.
That's right.
Okay.
Growing businesses.
I'd say that was the last question. I have one more, actually. Okay. What question would you like to ask our next guest?
Oof, that's difficult. There's a podcast I listen to, actually, which is the ActionCoach business podcast. And one of the questions there they ask, which I really enjoy, is if your life was a movie, how would you describe your life? So pick a movie, and how do you describe your life? It's quite a good question to think about, actually.
Car crash.
I don't think it is for you, Matthew. And I think my reflection on when I think of Matthew Douglas is, and as a coach is really trying to make sure that the person achieves not just their business goals, but their life goals. And those life goals are really about financial saving for the future. And for me personally, I love working as a coach with companies like Matthew Douglas, IFAs, to allow people to get the rewards from that business into their longer life. And that's really, I think, the partnership I enjoy the most. And that's why I like working with MDL.
Yeah, no, we love having you here, and it's been a fantastic relationship. So thank you, Andrew. It's been really, really interesting and really insightful. I hope we'll see you again.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and good luck with the rest of the podcasts.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.